Jordanian occupation of the West Bank refers to the occupation and annexation of the West Bank by Jordan, during a period of nearly 2 decades in the aftermath of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. During the war, Jordan's Arab Legion conquered the Old City of Jerusalem and took control of territory on the western side of the Jordan River, including the cities of Jericho, Bethlehem, Hebron and Nablus. At the end of hostilities, Jordan was in complete control of the West Bank. Jordan formally annexed the West Bank on April 24, 1950. The annexation was regarded as illegal and void by the Arab League and others. It was recognized only by Britain, Iraq and Pakistan. The annexation of the West Bank more than doubled the population of Jordan. History: 1948 Arab-Israeli War. On 14 May 1948, David Ben-Gurion, on behalf of the Jewish leadership, declared the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Israel, to be known as the State of Israel. The Jordanian Arab Legion, under the leadership of Sir John Bagot Glubb, known as Glubb Pasha, was ordered to enter Palestine, secure the UN-designated Arab area, and then enter the Jerusalem Corpus Separatum as defined by the UN Partition Plan. On September 22, 1948, the All-Palestine government was established in Gaza, captured by Egypt. On September 30, the First Palestine Congress, which saw Palestine as part of Syria, denounced the Gaza government. The December 1948 Jericho Conference, a meeting of prominent Palestinian leaders and King Abdullah, voted in favor of annexation into what was then Transjordan. By the end of the war, Jordanian forces had control over the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. On April 3, 1949, Israel and Jordan signed an armistice agreement. The main points included: Jordanian forces remained in most positions they held in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Old City. Jordan withdrew its forces from its front posts overlooking the Sharon Plain. In return, Israel agreed to allow Jordanian forces to take over positions in the West Bank previously held by Iraqi forces. A special committee was to be formed to make arrangements for safe movement of traffic between Jerusalem and Mount Scopus campus of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, along the Latrun-Jerusalem Highway, free access to the holy places, and other matters. The committee was never formed, and access to the holy places was denied to Israelis throughout the Jordanian occupation. The remainder of the area, designated as part of an Arab state under the UN Partition Plan, was partly occupied by Egypt, partly occupied and annexed by Israel. The intended international enclave of Jerusalem was divided between Israel and Jordan. The Jordanians immediately expelled all the Jewish residents of East Jerusalem. All but one of the 35 synagogues in the Old City were destroyed over the course of the next 19 years, either razed or used as stables and chicken coops. Many other historic and religiously significant buildings were replaced by modern structures. The ancient Jewish cemetery on Mount of Olives was desecrated, and the tombstones were used for construction, paving roads and lining latrines. The highway to the Intercontinental Hotel was built on top of the site. Annexation. In March 1948, the British cabinet had agreed that the civil and military authorities in Palestine should make no effort to oppose the setting up of a Jewish state, or a move into Palestine from Transjordan. The United States, together with the United Kingdom, favored the annexation by Transjordan. The UK preferred to permit King Abdullah to annex the territory at the earliest date, while the United States preferred to wait until after the conclusion of the Palestine Conciliation Commission brokered negotiations. Jordan formally annexed the West Bank on April 24, 1950, giving all residents automatic Jordanian citizenship. West Bank residents had already received the right to claim Jordanian citizenship in December 1949. Jordan's annexation was widely regarded as illegal and void by the Arab League and others. Elihu Lauterpacht described it as a move that entirely lacked legal justification. The annexation formed part of Jordan's Greater Syria Plan, expansionist policy, and in response, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon and Syria joined Egypt in demanding Jordan's expulsion from the Arab League. A motion to expel Jordan from the League was prevented by the dissenting votes of Yemen and Iraq. On June 12, 1950, the Arab League declared the annexation was a temporary, practical measure and that Jordan was holding the territory as a trustee, pending a future settlement. On July 27, 1953, King Hussein of Jordan announced that East Jerusalem was the alternative capital of the Hashemite kingdom, and would form an integral and inseparable part of Jordan. In an address to Parliament in Jerusalem in 1960, Hussein called the city the second capital of the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. Only the United Kingdom formally recognized the annexation of the West Bank, de facto in the case of East Jerusalem. The United States Department of State also recognized this extension of Jordanian sovereignty. Pakistan is often claimed to have recognized Jordan's annexation too, but this is dubious. In 1950, the British extended formal recognition to the union between the Hashemite kingdom and that part of Palestine under Jordanian occupation and control, with the exception of Jerusalem. The British government stated that it regarded the provisions of the Anglo-Jordan Treaty of Alliance of 1948 as applicable to all the territory included in the Union. Despite Arab League opposition, the inhabitants of the West Bank became citizens of Jordan. Tensions continued between Jordan and Israel through the early 1950s, with Palestinian guerrillas and Israeli commandos crossing the Green Line. Abdullah I of Jordan, who had become Emir of Transjordan in 1921 and king in 1923, was assassinated in 1951 during a visit to the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount in East Jerusalem by a Palestinian gunman following rumors that he was discussing a peace treaty with Israel. The trial found that this assassination had been planned by Colonel Abdullah el-Tel, ex-military governor of Jerusalem, and Musa Abdullah Husseini. He was succeeded by his grandson King Hussein of Jordan once he came of age in 1953, after his father Talal's brief reign. Jordanian occupation. Unlike any other Arab country to which they fled after the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, Palestinian refugees in the West Bank were given Jordanian citizenship on the same basis as existing residents. However, many of the refugees continued to live in camps and relied on UNRWA assistance for sustenance. Palestinian refugees constituted more than a third of the kingdom's population of 1.5 million. In the Jordanian parliament, the West and East Banks received 30 seats each, having roughly equal populations. The first elections were held on the 11th of April 1950. Although the West Bank had not yet been annexed, its residents were permitted to vote. The last Jordanian elections in which West Bank residents would vote were those of April 1967, but their parliamentary representatives would continue in office until 1988, when West Bank seats were finally abolished. Agriculture remained the primary activity of the territory. The West Bank, despite its smaller area, contained half of Jordan's agricultural land. In 1966, 43% of the labor force of 55,000 worked in agriculture, and 2,300 square kilometers were under cultivation. In 1965, 15,000 workers were employed in industry, producing 7% of the GNP. This number fell after the 1967 war, and would not be surpassed until 1983. The tourism industry also played an important role. 26 branches of 8 Arab banks were present. The Jordanian dinar became legal tender, and remains so there today. There was a significant flow of population from the West Bank to East Bank, in particular to the capital, Amman. Access to holy sites. Jordan had obligated itself within the framework of the April 3, 1949 armistice agreement to allow free access to the holy sites and cultural institutions and use of the cemeteries on the Mount of Olives. Christian pilgrims were allowed to visit the Temple Mount, but Jews of all countries and non-Jewish Israelis were barred from entering Jordan and therefore could not travel to the area. Tourists entering East Jerusalem had to present baptismal certificates or other proof they were not Jewish. The special committee that was to make arrangements for visits to holy places was never formed, and Israelis, irrespective of religion, were barred from entering the Old City and other holy sites. The Jewish quarter and its ancient synagogues were systematically destroyed, such as the Herva synagogue, and gravestones from the Jewish cemetery on the Mount of Olives were used to build latrines for Jordanian army barracks. Six-Day War. By the end of the Six-Day War, the formerly Jordanian-controlled West Bank with its 1 million Palestinian population had come under Israeli military occupation. About 300,000 Palestinian refugees fled to Jordan. After 1967, all religious groups were granted administration over their own holy sites, while administration of the Temple Mount, sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims, remained in the hands of the Jerusalem Islamic Waqf, which had held the responsibility for the previous 800 years. Aftermath. On July 31, 1988, Jordan renounced its claims to the West Bank and recognized the Palestine Liberation Organization as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. The 1993 Oslo Accords between the PLO and Israel opened the road for Jordan to proceed on its own negotiating track with Israel. The Washington Declaration was initialed one day after the Oslo Accords were signed. On July 25, 1994, King Hussein met with Israeli Prime Minister Rabin in the Rose Garden of the White House, where they signed the Washington Declaration, formally ending the 46-year state of war between Jordan and Israel. Finally, on October 26, 1994, Jordan signed the Israel-Jordan Peace Treaty, which normalized relations between the two countries and resolved territorial disputes between them. Gallery. Arab Legionnaires attacking Porat Yosef Yeshiva, Old City of Jerusalem, 1948. King Abdullah at Church of the Holy Sepulchre, May 29, 1948. Arab Legion soldier posing in the ruins of the Herva Synagogue, Jerusalem. Announcement in the UK House of Commons of the recognition of the State of Israel and also of the annexation of the West Bank by the State of Jordan.